and following along on our 2,000 mile road trip in our high mileage E46 M3.
We bought this car with a laundry list of issues. When we did the first inspection on the car, we found out the rear differential is grinding, especially when you turn full lock to lock. The valves are out of adjustment. Super common on these S54 motors. Every 50 to 60,000 miles, the valves need adjusting. There's a bad oil leak that I suspect is coming from the back of the motor and dripping on the exhaust. It's not visible because the valve cover gasket has been done. It smells terrible when the car comes to a stop. The cruise control also does not work, which has been terrible on a long road trip like this. Constantly having to press on the gas, never giving your leg a rest. The AC does not work on the car. So right now we're in the cooler part of the Midwest where we don't have to worry so much about the AC, but when we get into the South, that's going to be a big problem. The hood is completely mismatched, as you saw in our previous video. The previous owner had a fan clutch blow up on the car that dented the hood, so they replaced it with the only E46 M3 hood that they could find. However, it doesn't match the car, and it has a wrap on it that I suspect was on there for 8+ years because it's super faded and cracked in a million places, and the glue is stuck to the hood. So we'll go through seeing how much of that we can actually get removed from the car. The paint is faded on top of the doors just from sitting in the sun. I suspect this car spent most of its life in Colorado where the UV is very high. The car is also covered in hail. Colorado has a lot of hailstorms, so we'll be going through doing some PDR. I'm not a PDR professional, but we'll take it somewhere to do PDR on the car once we get it home. Let's go through a couple of those issues and how we took care of them before we went on our road trip. So today's the day we finally start getting this thing ready for the road trip. So I already got about 370 miles on it just driving around down here. We installed the camera yesterday, so got that all wired up and run to a USB that was just sticking out underneath the dash over there. But we're headed in right now to the shop, get it up on the lift, inspect underneath the car, and then also we are going to put new differential fluid in the car and do an oil change. So we stopped by Winslow BMW yesterday. We're here at Winslow BMW in Colorado Springs, grabbing 6 liters of oil and the rear differential fluid and the filter, which is about $250 that I'm not sure this car is worth, but the differential is grinding a little bit. Figure we'll change the fluids before we head out. So we stopped and snagged this stuff. Grab that stuff, as I'm sure you guys can see. So now we're going to get that stuff installed, do a final inspection on the car, put in the windshield washer tank, and then we'll be kind of ready to take off and drive this thing 2,000 miles. So fingers crossed. So while the E46 M3 was getting worked on, getting the differential fluid and oil change, I stopped by to see my buddies at the Ford dealership and check out the new 2024 50 GT. Unfortunately, the only one they had for me to drive while I was there was an automatic configuration. It's a decent car, but I'm going to stick to the German route. So after I grabbed the car from Ford, we jumped back on the road where Aaliyah was doing some of her makeup. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to film underneath the car while they were working on it due to being caught up doing the test drive on the 50 GT. So we fueled up the E46 M3 and headed to Denver, where we were going to finish up the final preparations we needed to make before we took off for our 2,000 mile road trip. So we just stopped for fuel, and now we are on our way up to Denver to finish the last couple things on the car we need to finish before we take off early in the morning tomorrow. Yesterday we took it to the shop and got the differential fluid put in the car and got the oil change done. The stuff that we purchased from Winslow BMW down here a couple days before, so that's done. The differential seems to have quieted down a little bit. The oil is now changed, so we're worried about that being fresh. There's a fair bit burning off, so hopefully I don't need any extra oil on the way home. But Leah's got her makeup done. She's ready for the road trip. We got all of our gear in the back. So we're about to see if this thing can make it another 2,000 miles home. Luckily, it looks like the weather's going to be great, so we don't have to worry about that. So fingers crossed that we can make it.
When we got to Denver, we began the long and arduous process of removing the stubborn, baked-on wrap that was making the hood look absolutely terrible. So Aaliyah and I struggled with this for the better part of 2 or 3 hours, coming off in little pieces until we finally got it all removed. We then decided to try to fix the cruise control, since we were going to be driving the car for a long period of time. After looking on the forums, it looked like it was most likely related to the stoplight switch, which registers whether or not the brake is pushed. When this switch is bad, it shows that the brake is depressed when it's actually not depressed. So we went ahead and swapped this. Unfortunately, it didn't end up fixing the cruise control. So we got up at 3 a.m. the next morning to start that day's 17-hour drive to Nashville.
At our first fuel stop, got some coffee. Surprisingly, this little S54 is actually doing pretty good. It's about to be sunrise. We've got Aaliyah driving manual for the second time on the interstate right now, doing a nice safe 65 miles an hour in a 75. Doing a great job. Had to try to get a little bit of rest in. You're joining us on our road trip in the middle of Kansas, about 800 miles, actually a little less than 800 miles because we reset that a little bit before we left, but 600 or 700 miles through our road trip, about a third of the way, where surprisingly the high mileage E46 M3 has been doing great. So if you can see that odometer, we have now done about 174,000 miles. The car had just over, well, almost 173,000 when we got it. We drove around quite a bit while we were there, getting different things taken care of, as you saw. So good news is the AC does work and function as it should. We were able to take care of that with a simple AC recharge. Sorry we didn't get a clip of that, but that was just an AC recharge. I suspect that that system actually has a leak in it. That's why it needs to be recharged, because the previous owner had told me that they recharged the AC before. So luckily enough, that was an easy fix. The AC does blow cold. As far as the cruise control is concerned, that brake, they call it a stop light switch. It's really a sensor for when the brake pedal is depressed. Apparently that can affect the cruise control on these cars. That was pretty much the most difficult, easy repair. It was 2 bolts, you had to remove a spring and a couple plastic clips, but it was so hard to get to. It was an absolute nightmare changing that out, and then it turns out that wasn't our problem. I'm almost positive at this point that it's the clutch switch. Quite a few different things I've read on the forums of what that could be, but I'm thinking that's what it is. Fortunately, the car has been running great so far. This S54 with its clicky valves and all the other quirks with it, it had 15,000 miles between its last oil change according to the computer. It has been getting just shy, well actually 25 exactly miles to the gallon, which is respectable. I suspect once we get the valves adjusted, get the car running a little bit better, the fuel economy will probably improve a little bit, but fingers crossed we can make it another 1,300 miles with the car, but so far it's been doing great.
With our high mileage E46 M3 and its S54 motor clicking away, it was time to chew up as many hard miles as possible and get to Nashville.
finally got here after 17 hours of driving. The lights are flashing. The car's pretty much dying at stoplights. It seems to be running now, but I guess we'll see how it runs tomorrow. These S54s have 6 individual throttle bodies, so I'm guessing the throttle bodies are out of sync, or it's just got a miss or something like that. I'm not sure. It seems to be running okay now if you kind of blip the throttle, but it was running really poorly, and the lights are going dim, which leads me to believe maybe an alternator issue. I don't know, but we'll find out.